contained. That's holding. That's very good information. CAF, and they're really one now Title I complex fire, but CAF is remaining at about 11%, so really not getting where we want to be. I need to check that number before I go on, but that's the area where we're seeing extreme risk to small communities. And to give you a sense, and I can see that my folks are looking, the Calf Canyon Hermits Peak Fire has now burned more than 200,000 acres in Mora and San Miguel counties. It is up by 14,000 acres in one day. There's more than 1,700 firefighting personnel. That continues to grow. And so for folks who have been with us for these briefings from the EOC, you'll note that as you can add personnel, right, because it depends on where the fire is and what firefighting strategies. Wildfires, and I've said this before, and I know that my firefighting experts, including the general, will weigh in, but it's not like a typical structure fire. You don't fight it in the same way. You can't even get to it in the same way. And when the wind takes it, you can't deal with it in the same way. So it's containment lines. It's pushing the fire onto itself where it's already burned through fuel, and it's air support. We do structure protection, and I will tell you that the reports by the 1,700 plus firefighters as they get closer in, and they can safely to these structures in small communities, that those structure protection efforts are working, and the fire containment lines are working, except for the wind gusts that can take an ember a mile in the wrong direction, or, for example, over a containment direction, or, for example, over a containment line. That's why the winds are so dangerous, right? They get a hold of the fire, and it moves in places that isn't near a containment line, and that it moves, frankly, far too quickly for individuals to be able to deal with that until we create another section of containment and air support. I will say that when I said it was about 43% contained, it looks like we lost a little ground. So I want to clarify yesterday that what I'm referring to is the core of the Hermits Peak at 43. Now they're identifying at 39. The reason that that's important, and it's written for me, is this literally changes almost moment to moment, getting the information because we wait for shift changes, incident command reports, and we double check it, all that information filters to the EOC, then it goes back to every single community. But given these extreme historic wind weather, earnestly, this is probably the best outcome over the last couple of days on this fire we could have hoped for. Now, we are not out of danger in any respect. And in fact, we've updated the weather predictions so that it's either red flag, extreme risk, or just under red flag for at least another 2 days, potentially 2.5. Remember, that information gets updated by firefighting meteorology reports. It's very specific to fire. It's very specific to this fire, very specific to New Mexico, and it's very specific to the fire behavioralist who also predicts what we will see, which is how, in fact, the emergency managers and the sheriffs who work hand in hand in each of the counties affected make decisions about evacuations. So right now we've got 6 active large fires burning in 6 New Mexico counties. And I'm going to go to cities. I know that it was all over social media last night, and it was effectively reported also by the media. We had a structure fire in Cuba. I'm going to use this language. That appears to be completely addressed. Notice that's different than saying it's completely extinguished. We might have a little sparks, and we've got crews that are paying attention. The same with Santa Rosa. We had, I think it was an RV, we had a grass fire,
Early in the fire, there was at least an identifiable risk for a mobile home park, so a residential area. Winds shifted to our benefit. That fire, again, we don't use the language extinguished, but does appear that that fire is completely controlled and is not in a high-risk situation for us. Notice, we are getting fire crews everywhere that we need them. That's because of every partner, including the State Forest Service, including the National Guard, and certainly all of our local and national, to some degree, international firefighter experts. We now have 6 firefighting strike teams in New Mexico, focused largely on CAF and Hermit. Remember, those are, the way I would describe it to New Mexicans looking at this is that elite crew that is called in to tackle the most difficult wildfires, right? 6 is a bunch of those crews. We need them. We will keep getting those assigned and set up wherever we need them. The McBride fire is where was not identified as risk in Lincoln County, right? We were pushing it onto itself and managing that fire. Remember, we've talked about that for CAF and Hermit. Even when we get to a really good place and everyone's back where they are, we're going to still be dealing with that fire. It stays hot. Tree roots can still be on fire. There's a ton of issues. But this one is now 100% contained as of yesterday, and Cooks Peak is stable at 97. So again, we don't view either of those fires with any number of droughts and weather risks as being in an extreme or dangerous category. We are confident that we have those fires well managed and not concerned that those will flare up again. It really changes. The winds that I just talked about also resulted in significant growth of the Cerro Pelado fire. This is a fire that is certainly in Los Alamos, Santa Fe, Sandoval counties. This fire threatens Jemez Pueblo, Jemez Springs, Villa Caldera, Los Alamos, Bandelier. So this is a fire that is only 11% contained and is now at 42,000 acres. Again, we have not heard of any structure losses or significant issues. Los Alamos and other communities, same with communities in the CAF Hermit Peaks fire, are either evacuated, those evacuation notices keep going out, or you're on set. Set is the middle, it's ready, set, go. Set is now for some communities or neighborhoods in Los Alamos, Guadalupita for sure, and a couple other of those communities. Last message, same message. When you're in ready, it means that we need families to start packing and to be pretty aggressive about that. I worry that too many New Mexicans still think that this it's a light touch, you're going to have lots of time. There's no time. Set means your car is packed, your medications are ready, and that you can walk out the door. If we go to go, you walk out the door. Go means you walk out that door and you start traveling on the routes that have been identified for safe evacuations. When you're in go, you can't go back. We still have far too many New Mexicans who have made decisions to stay. That's risky for any number of reasons. Not the least of which is and I've mentioned this, if we get a call, we can't get in. If I have an ambulance that's trying to choose, even if it's moderately, maybe there's a window to get in and somebody else, a firefighter, is hurt. We're making untenable choices, and your life is not worth waiting to see if maybe, when you roll the dice, this fire's not going to come ripping through your community. These fires move extremely fast. It takes seconds when it's burning through grass and the wind. Think about this, and I think it's been faster, but the one that sticks with me, at least a week ago, early in the Cap and Hermit Peak, significant risk weather, was moving more than a mile a minute. All right, so when you think about you can see the fire in your backyard, you have seconds before it reaches your property. That's too late. So I just really want to reiterate that. I also have more bad weather news. I'm reading this, that in addition to the red flag and the wind, we have reports of potential dry lightning. And the reason that I mention that is, while we are clearly dealing with two very risky, extremely dangerous, large fires, Cerro Pelado, which is the fire Sandoval and Los Alamos counties primarily, and Cap Hermit Peak, which is San Miguel, Colfax, now moving into areas where we've got at least folks identifying risk, like Taos County, that we have fires other places, right? For any number of reasons. No smoking. Please, if you are smoking in the car, it's not outside, do not throw a lit cigarette outside. It will catch fire everywhere. The risks are incredibly high. And if we're going to deal with these communities and support New Mexicans safely, we have to mitigate risk in every other place in the state of New Mexico. There are some communities that are going to be getting information or already have that they can actually return home. So again, while we are really focused and should be on the wind, the weather, the extreme historic nature of these fires, we are having some success. Remember, Hermit's doing really well, and Cook, so that people can return. That is really good news because it's incredibly stressful for families to be displaced. I want to then do three more things and I'm done. One, FEMA, as you know, we introduced you to Ms. Esslinger, who has been on the ground and helping people in New Mexico navigate getting assistance. Remember, that's www.disasterassistance.com, or you can call 1-800-621-3362. FEMA staff are on location, on site, in Lincoln, Sandoval, San Miguel, and Taos counties. I also want to tell you that since FEMA opened this registration portal, not everyone's going directly to them for support. 184 households have applied for and received some relief. That relief right now totals, we think, about 130,000. And as I've been saying, with all due respect to FEMA, we need you, we want you, you're staying. It's a bumpy process between Red Cross and FEMA and HUD and any number of other opportunities for relief. Remember, we're asking for everything. I told New Mexicans to expect congressional specific appropriation requests. Till those bills are passed, they're just requests. The state stands ready to fill in as many gaps as possible. But folks, it's going to be bumpy because these are a lot of different independent avenues for relief. And by now, again, no offense to the federal government or state governments anywhere in the country, they should work better together. So let's see if New Mexico can't create an environment where states and the federal government find ways to do this more seamlessly. And I'm dedicated to doing that and have been on the phone with the White House making sure that that's occurring. And then the last thing I want to do, or two quick last things, we had more than 250 people at our Espanola event. That's where we bring the whole cabinet. This is how we fill those gaps. This is how we know when something isn't quite working. This is when we know that people are still displaced without having a hotel or a family or a shelter or an RV. Wherever we are standing up, New Mexicans, you are not alone. We want you to reach out to us. It was a very good meeting. We're going to continue to bring the entire cabinet. That's how we rebuild together. And then lastly, with this extreme weather, these incredibly dry conditions, and 166 homes and structures that we are aware of in just Cath and Hermit is 166 too many. We still mourn the loss of 2 New Mexicans that were lost in the McBride fire. We are in the best shape that we could be in when you look at potential loss of life, potential loss of homes and structures, and make no mistake, the firefighting expertise that's being delivered in New Mexico is second to none. They are incredible, including the Guard, personnel at Homeland Security, local law enforcement, sheriffs, police officers, state police are present and everywhere. Emergency managers and local elected leaders have all come together to make sure that New Mexicans are as protected as possible. All right, we are ready for questions.
Last night, Santa Fe's officials had a little Zoom meeting and saying, well, we're not in ready, set, or go at the moment. Everyone should probably at least start in preparation because everybody in the state is one signal fund out the car window of being in a place. How should, even if you're not in an area, should people be at least maybe taking a few precautions, cleaning the crap out of the lawn and everything else?
I actually think that for New Mexicans right now in this extreme fire season, any emergency preparedness, we used to do, and I don't remember them being as robust now around the country, but certainly when I was in even grade school and mid-school, you did fire and emergency practice. Families were given packages about make sure that you've got an escape route. You didn't create panic in your family, but you were prepared. I think that message from all local leaders, be prepared, think about it, be ready, be aware of your surroundings. We've been saying that. I really appreciate echoing that information. What we don't want is panic. People should not be panicked, but they should be aware, acutely aware. If you have the ability to remove fuel, dry brush, weeds, pine needles, pinon needles, feel free to take out all the juniper you want. Probably I shouldn't say that. Those trees do collect carbon, so maybe I'm giving them a bad rap. But you should remove, and in fact, there's been lots of support. Maybe the state forester would be willing to put out something on social media reminding folks about the best practices. And if you're disabled or elderly or unable, maybe we've got some state folks that we could assign to high-risk areas, which is every area in the state. So thank you, Santa Fe County. No panic, but good emergency preparedness is always important. Next question.
Bill, we've talked to some people who do not want to evacuate because they're scared their home will be looted. We've seen that in the Doghead fire a few years ago, and a handful of people and more that we spoke to do not want to evacuate because they're scared of being looted. What is being done to mitigate that so they could evacuate?
Yeah, I think it's fair that people have any number of concerns. Nobody wants to leave their house. And when you leave your house, you lock it, right? You think about that. We're not seeing any looting. There are no police reports of that occurring anywhere. That's why state police and certainly folks like the Guard cannot do police work. But they're in and around all of these communities where it's safe. State police are at those roads. They know who's in and who's out. Firefighters are in these communities fighting the fire. So I would say that while I can't promise anywhere in the state that I don't have a bad actor somewhere, we already talked about that, a few days ago. FEMA's not going to promise you that no one in the world isn't going to try to take advantage of this emergency and try to get a donation or a benefit or an application in. There are bad people. I think that is such a small risk that I think it's being overblown, in my view, by folks who, are pushing that out without having any facts. And then two, still not worth your life. And it's the same message we give to people. God forbid you have, someone who tries to hijack your car or mug you. Take care, be safe first, cognizant and safe. They need to leave. We're not going to get that message across to everyone. This fire is still extremely dangerous, and I don't want to lose any more New Mexicans to any fire or any danger anywhere. Next question.
Yeah, thank you. Can you confirm the structural damage in Hermits, Kath? You said about 166, is that accurate?
I'm going to ask. That last report I got was about 166 structures, homes.
I don't believe that number's been updated because it's not been safe to get in and do further
So,
assessment.
but confirmed, still at 166. Unconfirmed, we have reports that we're seeing that we've had some losses, but we can't confirm them, and they don't seem, so I'm going to do this, seem or appear to be catastrophic and significant. So what I mean by that, one house is significant. My house, significant. My house damaged, significant. But where we have, hundreds or thousands of properties impacted over the last couple of days, we don't see any indications or reports of that. But we are preparing that number, as we get information, will grow and will be updated. But that's what we have this morning.
Thank you. I have one follow-up,
Yep.
Governor. What is the current cost of fighting the fires? And is there any estimate on what it might cost in terms of damage yet?
So the last number I received, which is not going to be valid today, was upwards of 39 million. Where are we right now? 50 million.
For Calf Canyon.
So 50 million for Calf Canyon. And do we have an updated estimate for Cerro Pelado? We're going to get that before we leave this press conference. Good question. And I don't know that we have an estimate. We're in constant contact with our federal delegation in the White House. But in my mind, immediate recovery work for both individual assistance and, we have to rebuild forests. I want us to think about that. That doesn't happen overnight. Can't grow a tree 10 minutes. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions, hundreds. Maybe it's maybe it's 3 billion over the course of a significant amount of time. I think New Mexicans, particularly for what's occurred in northern New Mexico with Calf Hermit and even Cook, should expect that this is decades in the making for where people really flooding, mitigated, watersheds completely protected, restored, reservoirs newly mitigated, protected, more fuel out of these forests, homes rebuilt. I don't want New Mexicans to feel like we're going to leave anyone for 20 years in a rebuild. But just when you think about rebuilding communities, it is not an overnight process. So we should be thinking in terms of significant resources. And those resources, in my view, should largely be borne by the federal government, given the situation. And in addition, so that we're not picking on each other, it's a partnership to make people whole. FEMA's on the ground. Federal government is not telling us no. And when you think about even special appropriations, even when I was in Congress, congressional members are always clear that it takes repeat efforts at investing where we've had any number of natural disasters. And I know that we've all seen these numbers. I don't have them, Robert, but I'll bet Maddie or Nora will find them. We spend far more, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on recovery than we do on trying to mitigate or address the root causes of climate change. And that is a debate that needs more attention, in my view, at the national level. And one of the reasons New Mexico is working so hard to be a much more aggressive climate crisis state.
Yeah, just 2 quick questions. Have you gotten any clarity since last time we spoke about the prescribed burn, about the decision-making or the parameters behind the federal decision, like that, the prescribed burn?
I haven't. I know that they are clear that that has to be done. I think that given that we're in acute phase, there will be no prescribed burning in New Mexico, right? So no one has to worry about that. That's been made very clear to our partners. We're done. Nothing happens except fighting these fires and providing recovery assistance to New Mexicans. The long-term work, certainly the state forester will be involved in that. Homeland Security will be involved in that. The Environment Department will be involved in that. The state engineer, which is our water expertise, will be involved in that. The governor's office will be involved in that. And the Department of Ag, the Department of Interior, the White House specifically, and certainly Homeland Security, where we have our emergency disaster assistance, all of these partners, which is my last conversation with the Chief of Staff, which was yesterday, of the White House. All of that must occur. Let's get these fires managed, which means that it's safe to be home. Let's get that done, and let's get people some resources so they're not feeling abandoned in the context of this crisis, because that's how people feel. I would too. This is horrific what's happening to New Mexicans. So we're going to wrap around you. It's 15.8 million as of Monday, yesterday, in Cerro Pelado, and perhaps we can ask Ms. McCarthy to give us the total cost for firefighting in the state since fire season started, and we'll have that available through our office. Okay.
And just quickly, Paul, when you look at the devastation that's been caused by Cascade and Hermits Peak, in your mind, or do you have any estimates about how much damage can be attributed to either one of those fires, or is it impossible to tell at this point?
I think it's really impossible, but here is my position as a governor today. And we were having to focus on Hermits Peak. Those embers could have flown over anywhere, caused Cook and Calf. How do you know? I think we just focus with the federal government. A prescribed burn put us in the most dangerous situation. That in and of itself, even though it's an earnest mistake, I've got some New Mexicans, I understand this anger. I do. And then people are grieving. I had a New Mexican tell me we should put everyone in the U.S. Forest Service in jail, and that we should prosecute them, and that there were a number of things being said about individuals. While I understand that response and anger, that's not going to happen unless in an investigation you find that someone was acting outside of being an agent. It was a purposeful effort to hurt someone or a community. It met the levels of criminality and gross negligence. My sense in this moment, we're not going to find any of that. For me, it's negligent to consider a prescribed burn in a windy season in a state that's under an extreme drought warning statewide. So I think that it is likely that Congress and most of our federal partners accept that there is significant federal liability and we don't have to parcel it out in this way. That's my early sense. I think it will hold. But if anyone wants a fight about that, they'll get one. They will get one. Yep.
When it comes to the disaster assistance, is there a cap on what an individual can receive? And also, who can get it? Can let's say, an illegal immigrant receive disaster assistance if they lose property?
So I'm going to go to FEMA for that, and I'm going to do one thing on state. We, in New Mexico, we always have, this isn't new to me or anyone else, and it's good policy, that if you're a taxpayer, remember there's lots of folks that have different kinds of legal status in this country, including individuals and in the state who provide medical assistance and have a visa, but they're not a citizen. So in that regard, we have opportunities for folks to make sure that they're treated as a New Mexico resident. All right, so there are lots of different nuances there. Specifically, most of the programs we have do not apply to individuals that can't identify a status, including, there's a sense by Americans that Medicaid and other programs are available. They are not. Even if you're here legally but not a citizen, they're not available to you. For FEMA, I don't know the clarification, so I'm going to go to FEMA.
So I'm going to tell you that in our application process, that is not one of the questions that is asked. But I will have to say that there is a process that goes through validation of your residence. You do have to verify your residency, so there are identification requirements that might make it difficult. But what I will say right now is that we don't have specific requirements that would not allow folks to apply. And then to answer the question about the cap, I will say there are caps on various kinds of assistance. There are numbers of different programs that apply, and again, I'm going to go back to this is why it's so important. If you are dislocated or if your residence has been affected, for you to apply for assistance, because programs get turned on over time, and if you haven't registered with FEMA, you're not going to be eligible for those at a certain given time. So we want to, again, encourage people at the, to apply, register for those programs. And then it is based very much individually on what you qualify for. That's going to allow you to know what those caps are going to be. And it's very difficult to say just because I don't know what there are a range of programs that people can apply for.
Can you give us a sense, which is a bit unfair, now I'm the media, because it gives me a sense about what we have to look for folks. If you had to identify for another emergency, and remember, fires are different because you have complete losses, and here loss of livestock, and particularly in this area, people make their livings off the land. So it's not just that they lost livestock and their property, but perhaps they do outdoor recreation and then future grazing for livestock, and that may not now be available. So there's a whole different sort of loss structure that's going to be different here that's, I think, going to cause, my view, some challenging issues between New Mexico and the federal government that aren't easy to navigate under the current constructs of FEMA. But can you give us, in past disasters, if you had to do an average for a household, because it's too small, that's my view, but I think it's important for New Mexicans to be ready so they know how much work will be done by their other federal folks. And again, not a ding on FEMA. It's set up the way it's set up. It's spending billions of dollars across the country. Without FEMA, I have no hope of figuring out ways to close the gaps and get people immediate assistance right now. So I'm grateful. But if you had to do an average for a household?
So if we're averaging household, I think the number that, if I'm not mistaken, that was given to me a while back was about $12,000. We're not talking about tremendous amounts of money. Now, what I will say is the wildfire's different. If you're talking about wildfires and you are talking about complete loss of property, as opposed to damage to property, which you might get with floods or other events, you are looking at a different amount. But I will go back to what I said before, that the federal assistance is not a substitute for insurance. And that's part of the challenge that we have, is that there are caps on the amounts that are available for repairing and replacing property. They're only going to go up to a certain amount, and then there are various programs that are going to apply. So, if you get a max grant, for example, here, you would probably be looking at a much higher amount.
Right, and there are other federal programs. It's not just FEMA, and we did some looking, not to challenge. She's the expert, all right? I'm not the FEMA expert. That's why they're on the ground. We found some averages for other disasters that were closer to 30. The point I want, and thank you for throwing a number out there. So I want New Mexicans to be prepared. It will not be enough, right? It will not be enough, which is why we are working to make sure that there are other resources as quickly as possible, including we have to find long-term, free, or greatly reduce, my priority is free housing, while we address housing for the number of New Mexicans who in fact will be displaced too long after the fire is managed. And I'm committed to that because that's how we do things in New Mexico. You know, the state can't be responsible for every loss, for every issue where a New Mexico resident or family has been victimized. I wish we could. My attitude is that the resilience of the state is because we try to do that, lift everyone up. But here in this particular situation, and the resiliency and the water, frankly, for the rest of the state, for any number of economic issues, really depend on getting this right in the north. So we're going to lead by example, and let's see if we can't change all these rules for everybody else across the country by getting it right for every single New Mexico family. That's our commitment, as whole as humanly possible, navigating every single available resource, including private sector donations, all of it. I just want to make sure that people know that we're going to fight for you hard.
Governor, I'll give it back to you if there's any other closing remarks you want to make.
One more question, and then I can.
We've got a holiday weekend coming up. Any chance of, as unpopular as it is, of closing federal or state parks totally?
You know, that has not been debated. It's been thrown out there. I'm worried about cars and unintended, access to these parks and areas creates risk. And in this situation, we can't take any more risk. On the other hand, just to be fair, we had very little risk issue and actual fire issues last summer, and it was as dry, basically. People have had a long 2.5 years, and it just feels like we don't get to came in here with a mask. I don't mind masks, but it's a new normal that's challenging. We've got 6 large areas: Santa Fe, Albuquerque, I think Espanola is coming, Los Alamos. I should look at the list, Robert. Let me give it to you right now. I'll just read them, who are looking at restricting or banning altogether fireworks. We'll put together a comprehensive list today and also provide that to the media. But just to give you, a sense that people are moving in that direction. Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Los Alamos County, which I already said, Quay County, Roosevelt County, and San Juan County have either passed resolutions or used ordinances. So they're already thinking about that, mitigating risk. So this is not off the table, but we haven't made a decision more than banning fire from state lands and fireworks on state lands. So you can, if we don't close a park, you can go and take a hike, but you are not making a fire. You're not cooking in any context. Okay. Just, New Mexicans are we are all doing the best possible job, even though we're well under 50% contained in CAF Hermit, and well under, we're not even at 11% contained for the Cerro Pelado fire. Probably not enough to really talk about, except if you're not holding that or moving the needle while you still have areas that have growth in terms of what's burned, means that we aren't seeing what I would say sort of a productive management schedule. We are seeing a productive, in spite of the horrific weather. That is a terrible hand that has been dealt to New Mexico, but we're getting it done. We are getting it done. A thank you to the first responders again. Thank you to these communities who are carrying the brunt. Thank you to every single evacuated New Mexican who is cooking, cleaning, serving meals, and distributing any number of personal items and supplies every single day, even though they're displaced. Every other volunteer, every other community leader, every private resource, every donation. Truckloads of water, every group that's doing hot meals. We're increasing areas for hot meals, but more importantly, We're making sure that we're standing up in the north in a number of communities that you can pick up. We talked about this last time, food, and we'll put out that list so that you can get food for your families at schools, at churches, at community centers, at libraries. We want people to know that we're in it together. I couldn't do that without the generosity of so many Americans and so many New Mexicans. I want to thank everyone who's helping us get through this emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Glad you know